How pay to win is ESO? Well, if you want to play the best class in the game, you have to buy Necrom, because when Arcanist released, this class will be taking over PvP by storm. The amount of damage that this class can put out is god tier. The amount of tankiness and sustain this class has is just too good to be true. There is literally nothing wrong with this class at the moment. The only thing it lacks is burst, but that doesn't matter when you have some of the highest, if not the highest, sustained pressure out of any class in the game. I was able to get up over 7,000 DPS on a player, just absolutely melting through them with no real contest. Nothing can kill you when you have over a 30k damage shield, completely busted in every way. Don't believe me? Let's take a look at those clips. Our first skill here, it will be Elemental. This gives us our Fulminator Breach. It's free, and every 7.5 seconds, it applies the Burning Chill and concussive status effects, so just a bit of extra damage right there, and proximal status effects is really nice, since our class actually gets bonus towards status effects right here, increasing damage dealt by status effects by 15%, and increases the chance of status effects by 75%. So this passive synergizes well with Elemental here. Runic Thunder. I like this ability personally because it gives us 2200 armor, applies minor mayhem for 15 seconds, reducing their damage done by 5%, and on top of that we also get the 2200 armor applied to ourselves. So it's not only basically gives us 2200 more penetration, but it gives us 2200 more physical and spell resistance as well. And then for each crux activated, we get 6% damage reduction. The Uncanny Rune here will be our main CC for this build. I chose this morph because I just like the fact that it's delayed after 1 second. And it gives us, and it applies minor vulnerability. And it applies minor vulnerability for 10 seconds, increasing their damage taken by 5%, which is just nice, gives us some extra damage. But I really like the fact that the stun is delayed for 1 second, so it allows us to use another ability right as the stun hits. For those of you who don't know, ESO has a global cooldown of 1 second, which means you can't use another ability right after another. You have to wait 1 whole second. So the fact that this stun is after a second means by the time the stun hits, your next ability will be ready to be used. Our next ability here will be Rune Blades. I really like this. Not only does this do a lot of damage, 2600 magic damage, but it hits 3 times. This spell also gets 2200 weapon spell critical and deals 10% more damage, 3 crux active. The spell does do more damage than Crushing Shock. It generates a crux and it gets, 10% extra crit, and it does about 10% more damage here. This is super good and I really love spamming this. I definitely think this is better than Crushing Shock. Rune Ward, the best ability in the game right now in my opinion by far. Whenever you use this, you get a 20,000 damage shield for 1 second. And then on top of that, you get another 12k damage shield for 5 seconds, but it also deals direct damage when the shield is first hit, dealing 4000 magic damage to your attackers, scaling off your armor. But not only that, it also consumes a crux to heal you for 3200 health, scaling off your max health per crux spent. When you have 3 crux activated, this will heal you for about 9300 HP, which is an insane amount of HP, and since this is the only spell on our build that consumes our cruxes, every time we have 3 cruxes up, you just use this, you get basically a 10k free heal, a 20k damage shield, and then another 12,000 damage shield. It's just so good. It does so much. This spell is completely broken in my opinion, and just gives us all the survivability we need in one spell. For ultimate here, we're running the Tide King. I love this ultimate because it does an insane amount of pressure with 4000 magic damage to every enemy within 5 meters every 0.5 seconds. So this thing can just pump the DPS, and synergize as well with Uncanny here, since you can pop Uncanny, and then before the sun hits, you can use Tide King, allowing this dot just to shred through your opponents very quickly, dealing an insane amount of damage. But if you don't run this, you can run something like Eye of the Storm here, or you can even run the fighter ability Dawnbreaker, but I just think Tide King is too good, and I definitely recommend running this over the other ultimate. For our weapon buff here, it'll be Treat here. You gain Major Brutality and Major Sorcery, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 20%, which is good, But not only that, but when you activate the ability, you deal an additional 4,000 magic damage every 5 seconds, restoring 600 Magicka and stamina, and generate a crux if you have none. So this is a great way to deal additional damage over time, and it's a good way to get some sustain back. You can choose the other morph. The other morph does do more damage, but you do lack this insane sustain this actually gives you. So it just comes down to personal preference. If you want more damage, which you don't need on this build, you already have an insane amount of damage. I just prefer the sustain since my damage is already so high that I'd rather just have the sustain at that point. Blood Craze here, I chose this more for the heal. You heal 11,000 health every time this ability does damage, which is super good. And plus you need to run this ability for the juicy bleed damage, and it procs our master. Resolving Vigor here, great heal over time, gives us minor resolve, nothing else to be said there. Fomenting Rune, this will be our flex spot along with Runic Sunder. If you want more damage, you would swap out Runic Sunder. If you want more tankiness, you would swap out Fomenting Rune. Either of them works. If you want a mobility skill like Elusive Mist, or if you wanted a skill like Race Against Time, you would either swap out Fomenting Rune or Runic Sunder. Runic Sunder, if you want more damage, you swap out Fomenting Rune if you want some more tankiness from the Runic Sunder. Anyways, onto Fomenting Rune. Fomenting Rune is just a good dot. You deal 4,500 frost damage after Fomenting Rune has lingered on the target for 6 seconds, dealing damage to all enemies within 7 meters. So this is just a good overall hot, and does a bit of burst damage after 6 seconds, which is nice. Crux Weaver Armor. This is by far the better morph of the two, in my opinion, since you get Major Resolve, which is good. But while the armor persists, taking damage applies minor breach, reducing the armor of your attackers by 3k for 6 seconds. Those against your armor also generate a crux once every 5 seconds. Basically a free way to get cruxes every 5 seconds. Same with this, you get a crux every 5 seconds. So yeah, as you can see, it's very easy to generate cruxes on this build, which allow you to get Rune Ward proccing a lot and getting that juicy 9500 HP every time you proc new Rune Ward. That's why we can basically just rely on Rune Ward, Vigor, and Blood Craze to sustain our healing, and we don't actually need a big heal like Breath of Life, anything like that. We can just use Rune Ward to be our big heal. Then for our back bar ultimate here, I chose Shelter. The other morph of this is also viable, but I chose this morph just because it makes you super tanky and helps you if you're getting focused by multiple people. And it does that by giving you a damage shield that goes up to 60k that absorbs up to 60% of the damage for 10 seconds. And then when the shield absorbs damage, pseudopods will lash out to up to 6 allies within 15 meters, granting them a damage shield for 4 seconds that can absorb 10,000 damage. These shields can be applied once every 1 second. Both shield skills off your max HP. This makes you insanely tanky, and just like I'm taking too much damage, I can just pop this, and you can, withstand a bunch of burst damage. And on top of that, you can just be spamming Rune Ward, and you would just, be invincible pretty much. But if you want the other morph of this, the other morph is just a dot. The dot basically does around the same thing, where it shields up to 60% of your damage. And then when it takes too much damage, it explodes in like a 10 meter radius or something. And the dot's actually very good. The damaging morph for this, I definitely recommend. It's actually super strong as well. It just comes down to personal preference. Onto our stat sheet here. For the race, I am in Khajiit. You can choose Khajiit or Dark Owl. Both of them are very good for this. Choose whichever one you want to pick. Both of them do a bunch of damage. I just found that Khajiit did more damage overall. Plus, I like the extra sustain Khajiit gets, and that's why I chose to run Khajiit here. But Dark Elf is very good as well. This comes down to, I guess, personal preference more for this build. 44 points into max Magicka here to get 23k max Magicka. 20 points into Hell to get the, minimum requirement of 30k max HP. Plus their shields also scale off this, so that's another reason why I want that health pool to be decently high. 4k spell damage, 15% spell critical, 5k penetration, and 1600 crit resist. Our stats fully buffed up is 30k physical and spell resistance with 8k pen, 4,000 spell damage with 25% spell critical. Our recoveries for this build is also 3,000 Magicka recovery and 2,100 stamina recovery. For the Menace, I chose the Shadow simply because it gives us the most damage, and that's why I chose to run it. If you want more sustain, you can definitely choose the Astronaut or the Serpent, but it just comes down to personal preference with the Mana Stone. I just like the Shadow because it gives us low damage. For this build, we are Vampire Stage 3. Vampire Stage 3 is a must for every PvP build, and that is just simply because of the Undeath passive right here. It reduces your damage taken by up to 30% based on your missing HP. So So basically when you're at 50% HP, you're already getting 15% damage reduction alone from this passive, and that only goes up from there. So Vampire makes you insanely tanky, and it definitely probably needs a little bit of a nerf, since this is one of the reasons why people are so unkillable in Cyrodiil. Our food of choice will be Smoked Bear Haunch. I chose to run this for the extra mag and stamina recovery it provides along with the max HP. Druzo Mistral is the purple version of this food and will work just as fine, it's just a lot cheaper. So if you're poor, you definitely should run Druzo Mistral over Smoked Bear Haunch. Our crit damage is 33%. And our crit healing is 33% as well. The reason why I also chose to run these Wonder Stones as well is because you actually get a passive heal that helps you with your crit. Whenever you generate or consume a crux, increase your critical damage and critical healing by 12% for 7 seconds. So this is basically up 100% of the time. So that's one of the main reasons I chose to run kind of more of a crit setup here, because Fate of Fortune kind of leans into that. Other really important passives, by the way, is Wellsprings. Wellsprings is doing the same amount of recovery. Alright, onto our first set here. For our first set, it will be Draken. Draken is an amazing set for damage. Increases your damage done by 330, but reduces your healing taken by 10%. The healing taken does kind of suck, but it doesn't really hurt you that much, since most of your survivability comes from shielding, and shielding is not healing. So it doesn't really hurt our overall survivability too much, since we do rely on shields for the most part to survive. It will be sharpened with Azor Magicka enchantment. Azor Magicka just out with our Magicka sustain, and I definitely recommend running Azor Magicka and nothing else here. And sharpen is the best thing to run here as well, with an Infernal Staff or Flame Staff, and that's just because of the passives that Destruction Staffs get. Flame Staffs, for those of you who don't know, gives you 10% increased damage to your single target abilities, so it basically gives us 10% free damage to the majority of our spells. Very good. For our back bar set here, it will be Master Perfected with 1 charged and 1 flame damage clip, since once again that scales really well. Increases damage dealt with size effects by 15% and the size effect chance by 75%. That just scales really well with our Master Perfected duel here, so we run Shock for more damage and Flame for more damage. But you run this for the main reason of Twin Slashes deal 1600 more damage per initial hit, which is just massive, gives us an insane amount of extra damage. For our second set here will be Dragon's Appetite. This procs off having Blood Craze onto your opponent. Whenever Blood Craze is on your opponent, all your spells will deal an additional 225 damage. Every time something hits your opponent, it deals an additional 225 damage. Not only that, but after 10 stacks of Dragon Appetite, you heal for 10,000 health. It's a good way to get some additional healing, since we're lacking a main spammable heal. Dragon Appetite helps us with that quite immensely. But not only that, but the extra 225 damage we get from all our spells hitting our opponent is actually an insane amount of damage. I'll showcase you how much damage that actually is. So as you can see here, we can take Blood Craze. As you can see, it does 14,500. And if I remove one piece of Draken here, it goes down from 14,500 to 10,700. So Draken basically gives us 3,500 extra bleed damage on that alone. But that stacks for all our damage. It stacks on Blood Craze, stacks on Fermenting Rune, Treat here, all our damaging skills get that additional 330. Even the skill here gets an additional 330. Not only that, but that also pairs with Dragon's Appetite, so all our skills once again will go up to 225 every time they tick onto our opponent, which actually gives us some incredible DPS per second on players, and it just allows us to melt through our opponents. And we're running 1 Baron here for the extra stam and mag recovery it gives us. You can run whatever you want here, I just like the extra sustain. For our Mythic, it will be Sea Serpent Coil. I chose to run Sea Serpent Coil here because it just gives us an additional 10% damage from Major Berserk. Increases our weapon and spell damage by 430. Super good, super stat dense Mythic, gives us a bunch of stats. And the snare does kind of hurt you, but there's so many ways to get around it. You can just bunny hop or block or roll, and you'll be fine. It's just, I don't really find the snare hurts me that much, so I definitely like running the set for that insane amount of damage that Major Berserk gives you, and Major Courage, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 430. Rings here running 2 infused weapon damage glyphs. and then 1 Magicka recovery. Now the reason why I chose to run Magicka recovery over reduced cost is because, well, half our abilities are Magicka, the other half of their stamina are free. So this is stam, this is stam, this is stam. This is free and this is stam. So only 5 of our abilities cost Magicka. And at that point, I just decided it was better to run the recovery glyph here. Not only that, but this class also gets a passive like this, where you get 20% increased Magicka and stam recovery. So I think that this scales better overall, getting the additional Magicka recovery than it is to get the reduced cost glyph. Our back part here is charged and powered, by the way. You can choose to run defending here if you want instead. Totally up to you. Doesn't really matter, it's just personal preference. For our armor here, we're running 1 heavy boots with reinforced, 1 heavy legs with reinforced, heavy chest with reinforced, heavy helmet with reinforced, heavy shoulders with reinforced, so 5 reinforced heavy, 1 impen medium, and 1 light impen weights. You can run divine here for some extra crit damage. I just like the extra impen here for the setup in particular. All prismatic glyphs as well, by the way. Our potion for this build will be Essence of Immovable here. Become immune to knockbacks and disabling effects for 10 seconds. Super good. Basically allows you not to get CC for 10 seconds. Gives us Major Prophecy. And it restores Magicka, granting you Major Intellect, increasing your magic recovery for 30% for 47 seconds. You don't need tripods for the extra stam sustain. You already have enough stam sustain already. Since you won't really be blocking on this build, you just basically rely on your shields to get you through everything. So you don't need to whatsoever rely on blocking. I wouldn't recommend blocking at all on this build, by the way. You don't need to. You just use Rune Ward. You just roll occasionally, and you know you can block the heavy hitting spells, but I wouldn't hold block for an extended period of time on this. For our CP here, we went with Fighting Finesse for more damage, Master Arms more damage, Deadly Aim more damage, and Thermocharge more damage. Basically just damage across the board. You do not need any survivability CPs here because you just want more damage. Your class already has enough survivability just through Rune Ward already that you don't need any defensive blue CPs. Our red CP, we're running Pain Refuge, sustained by suffering. Since there is no negative effects, we have no way to cleanse negative effects in PvP. These two will always be up 100% of the time on this build. So you'll always get an additional 150 mag and stam recovery, which is synergized as well with the Arcanist class. And Pain Refuge, reduce your damage taken by 2% for every 2 negative effects on you, up to a maximum of 20%. This will scale up very, very fast, especially if you are in an outnumbered situation, giving you an insane amount of damage reduction. Shield Master here, reduces the cost of your damage shield by 10%. This is super good and a must. A lot cheaper shield, it's 400, so it's a lot actually. That comes out to a lot. Use the shield 5 times. You already saved yourself 2k Magicka. You don't need the one that increases the shield strength, since the shield is already so strong on its own. I just prefer the cost reduction so I can just use it more and it helps my sustain. Survival Instinct here, while affected with a status effect, your core combat skill costs 25% less. This just gives you a extra sustain to your stamina pool because it reduces your core combat skills. And once again, there will always be a status effect on you in PvP since we have no way whatsoever to cleanse them. Alright, and the way you want to play the build is very simple. You just want to make sure that everything is up all the time. Make sure you always have Blood Craze on the opponent you are attacking. Very, very important. This procs our Dragon Appetite here. You always want to make sure Blood Craze is on the opponent 100% of the time. Once Blood Craze is on, I would just pop my dots like so. And then you would just go to town, just auto attacking with Rune Blades. I mean, you just auto attack with Rune Blades. Once you pressure them enough, you would then go for the stun into the Tide King here, and their HP would just start to melt. This class, in my opinion, is by far the best class in the game right now. It does so much damage since you're allowed to go full offensive pretty much across the board. The only sustain I have is here and one glyph here. The rest is full damage. And because of that, you're just able to pump out so much overall DPS. And your opponent generally just can't survive it. Plus you have probably one of the best defensive kits in the game. Just through Rune Ward, you cannot die with this thing up, man. It's just, as long as you have Magicka in the tank on this class, you are unkillable. This is one Rune Ward can absorb up to over 30 grand of damage. which just gives you so much overall ability. Plus you have heals coming in from Dragon, and you've put a few good heals over time from Dragon, the Vigor, and Blood Craze. Your healing is still pretty good, not as good as other classes, but it more than makes up for that through Rune Ward here, giving you that juicy 30k damage shield. Plus, Rune Blaze is probably way better than Crushing Shock in my opinion, because of the fact that you get 10% additional crit to this. So our crits at fully buffed up is at 25%, but this ability actually gets 35% crit, and not only that, but it gets an additional 10% of the damage when you have all your cruxes around you. As you see, you have 3, so your sustain is insane, your tankiness is insane. This class lacks nothing. I guess the only thing this class actually does lack is burst, but it doesn't matter. And you can pull over 7,000 damage a second on opponents in PvP. You just melt through them immediately, and it's just, it doesn't even feel fair. But if you have any questions regarding the build, I'd be happy to answer anything down in the comments below. And if you did find this video helpful, it would mean a lot to me. Hit that like button and subscribe. And with that, I hope you guys did enjoy the video.